Soviet Union collapsed quarter a century ago. It marked the biggest geopolitical catastrophe in history. The balance of powers that was driving progress ahead was demolished. Since then, we live in the world where only one ultra-capitalistic superpower is dictating the way we consume food, entertainment, information, and everything else. The plurality of choice, which was provided before by the conceptual opposition of the idea of socialism to the idea of capitalism, disappeared. We tried to integrate into this new reality. We accepted our defeat in the Cold War. We wholeheartedly offered cooperation, converted our political system into West-oriented democracy, allowed capitalism to take over the planned economy, and welcomed Western-led international community to enjoy the full riches of Russia. But what did we get back? Neo-colonialist political and economic notations, expanding NATO, selfish support of local corruption practices for the sake of short-term revenues of your transnational corporations. Instead of helping us to grow a new generation of responsible leaders, you contributed and nurtured oligarchs and cronies, with whom you enjoy nowadays making selfies at Art Basel and Biennales. Russia assumed on its shoulders sovereign debt of the whole Soviet Union for the infrastructure that was built in all corners of the vast state during more than half of a century. Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Ukraine, and other states left the Union clean because of that. They got golden ticket out, while Russia assumed all the blame and responsibility for the economic mismanagement of the Union. We were promised that NATO will slowly transform into something else than instrument that's providing nationalistic, missionary, neo-colonial agenda of the United States. That it will become an international organization that is focused on peacekeeping. Instead of it, already for 20 years, we see the construction of new military bases around our borders and on the territory of the former parts of the Soviet Union and Russian Empire. Instead of peacekeeping, we see strangling. It all happens quietly with your firm European smile. The same good manners were used by you during the centuries of slavery and colonization of the other parts of our planet. Your snobism makes us sick. We are shamed by the West for our model of democracy. But think for a second, does your Western model of democracy, as universal as you think about it, works anywhere, even in your hemisphere? Africa is a complete mess, precisely because you brought these institutions that are alien to everything that existed in there before. France supported dictators in Gabon, Belgium murdered Patrice Lumumba, the United Kingdom systemically messed up the Middle East. The list is very, 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 very long. Your own youth are sick of inequality in capital and power redistribution. They're sick of your usurping elites, of hopelessness for the future and postmodern disorientation in moral and ideological values. Our goal is not to replicate your democracy, but to build solid infrastructure of survival and further development of our civilization. We were cornered by you and left with no choice but to play the cards of national revival, to build retrograde walls, because the partnership game you played with us appeared no more than a trick of a colonizer. Analogy of beads that you were providing to indigenous population in the Americas and in Africa for their rich lands. And this is your thank you for tens of millions of lives that we've sacrificed to stop advancement of Napoleon and Hitler. Take the issue of the war in Ukraine, for example. It was a very corrupt place from the beginning. Political infrastructure in there is just rotten from the bottom to the very top. Instead of being focused on how to help, to develop, and to climb out of the systemic crisis, you're focused on taking it out of the Russian sphere of influence. For years, you actively supported antagonization of Ukrainian society and Russia. When we offered three-party integration of economies of Russia, European Union, and Ukraine, It was you who declined this offer, saying that you will deal with each of the partners individually, therefore disrespecting decades of economic ties that were built between Russia and Ukraine at the times when we shared the same borders. You say it's we who are reviving geopolitics and acting in the methods of 19th century realpolitik. But ask yourself, who was modeling cultural ties between Russia and its immediate neighbors, which we were sharing for centuries along of the common history? If you were so keen and open for cooperation with Russia in the first place, what made you so motivated to develop strategy of weakening strategic positioning of Russia in the region? Your irresponsible, unwise, and selfish actions are the reason why we now look at Asia with a glimpse of hope, of building constructive relations based on mutual interest, benefit, and honesty. You perfectly know that, like in cosmology, there is a dichotomy between universe and multiverse. In politics, there is some kind of extent of cosmology of human mind that also can be seen from the multidimensional perspective. If you allow Burma voters and tomorrow exercise their right to freely vote about the right of Muslim minority, they will massacre them all. Look at democratic India and complete devastating mess in there. Singapore wouldn't have been that success story if it followed your democratic patterns. Maybe it's time to reevaluate your short-sighted, universalist, colonial approach to the world. Maybe you will finally understand that we don't live anymore in the world of the totalitarian monopoly of your picture of the world, and finally will demonstrate some respect to diversity of opinions. We don't fundamentally argue against your concept of enlightenment, but we ask for moderation and respect for our culture. Your snobbish, non-constructive pretense drives society towards ultra-conservatism. And do you think we enjoy it ourselves? We still call you partners. We're open for the dialogue. We understand that cooperation, if not already desirable, is inevitable and vital for both of us. But if you continue to act like you don't understand the basis of our dissatisfactions, that we are barbaric tribes that undermine the light that you bring into the world, we're afraid our orbits will continue to dangerously drift away.